Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields, and I've got multi-time guest, platinum artist, Stephen Rapposelli on with me again today. Stephen, hey, great to have you.
Nathan, as always, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, man. And I'd recommend, if people haven't listened to Stephen's previous podcast episodes and appearances, go back and do that. He's doing some really cool stuff with a company he started to the side of his PT clinic called StretchPlex. The beginnings of that, what that is, maybe we'll get into that a little bit later on in the podcast. And he also has some thoughts about the PT industry in general. So he's been a many-time guest and a long-time listener and the number one fan of the show for sure. So go back and listen to those podcasts and you can learn a little bit more about what Stephen's doing. But he wants to give us an update today on what he has been up to. And tell us, man, what are you up to?
So first of all, I want to tell you I'm upset. I'm upset because this is not going to be enough time together. There's so much to talk about. And the intention here is that this is going to be a little shocking, a little bit entertaining, and a little bit educational. And your listeners are definitely going to learn something that they can have an immediate effect, even if it's just in your current PT practice. So if you're like me, you're listening to this podcast while you're on the recumbent bike or the treadmill, open up your notes app now and get ready to write some things down because this one's going to be juicy. And with Nathan and I, when we get together, it's kind of part church revival, part Starsky and Hutch. So it can go in many different directions. Right. Nathan is always a good sport because he has no idea what I'm about to say. But the main thing I want to tell people is if you are contemplating cash-based services, because that's a buzzy kind of thing these days, I'm going to offer you my perspective and my experience with it. This is my experience. I'm just sharing you what's happened to me over the last 2 years. Yours may be different, but I hope that it'll either push you, the PT owner, into a heck yes or heck no scenario about cash-based service. I think that my opinions have some weight to them because I've been in PT my whole life. It's in my DNA. It's woven into me. So I've been a PT since 1987, had my own practice for 31 years. My mom was my first employee. Thank God, because I didn't pay her. But she was my receptionist, my biller. She brought me lunch. So it was one of those kind of practices back in 1992. And fast forward, a lot of lessons learned in 2000. We were kind of getting sick and tired of discharging patients with, lots of musculoskeletal issues to continue their workouts at the local Y. And we decided, well, why don't we open up our own fitness center? So we did. And that was going on for probably 21 years. And then COVID hit, which changed everything. And boy, what a blessing COVID was in some ways, because it opens up your mind. I'm sure it opened up all of our minds in one way or another. Over those years, I had for example, a total knee patient, and you're stretching them out. And I know we have all had this experience. They look up at you and they go, you know what? I would pay for you just to stretch me out after I'm discharged. And you're like, oh, shucks, we don't do that. After about 20 years of hearing that, finally dawned on me, maybe that has some validity to it, maybe. But the real aha moments came sometime in 2019. I forget the exact year, but some of your listeners were there with me. I'm sure it was at a Graham session. Two things happened at that Graham session. Young guy, I wish I knew his name because I like to send him flowers or at least Italian hoagie or something. He got up and he goes, I want everybody to take out your phone and I want you to put in the browser StretchPlex. And 120 people did that, and you could hear a collective gasp. And I looked around the room and you could see people's jaws were dropped open. Because here was a business that offered stretching by a flexologist. Well, your gut reaction as a PT, I don't need to tell you, people were just horrified and outraged and all those other negative feelings. And I shared that too. He said, it is the future. I don't even remember what the guy said after that because, I think my brain shut down. Next speaker, I think it was probably, it might not have been the next one. Young gal, an influencer on social media. Again, I can't even remember if she was a PT, but she was showing screenshots of her content online, on Instagram or whatever, and how she's selling, fitness, exercise services. And I'm looking, and I'm like, well, I know I don't look like that in a bikini. So, you let yourself be upset, as I'm sure we all do when we're scrolling through our feeds and you see people who have no business, probably. They're probably not doctors of physical therapy, but they're selling all kinds of stuff to people. Well, that was my next aha moment. I said, you know what? I can be that cranky old man and complain about the world, or knowing how the rules of the planet are, I can optimize them. And I don't want to say take advantage, but you have to adapt. So I did. Then, you scroll through your feed, and maybe your listeners know this. You scroll through your feed and you see something called spinal decompression. And you go, wow, I wonder what that is. And you look at it, chiropractor, and you say, wait a minute, that's traction.
Mm-hmm.
I do traction. I've done traction for the last 30 years.
Right.
There's a lesson learned. Right? I looked in the Hammacher Schlemmer, I'm probably saying it wrong, catalog with fancy stuff in it. Right? The little LED projection that you can put on your bedroom, and, the fuzzy slippers and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
What can you buy there? Electrical stimulation machine. Infrared. I think you can probably even buy an ultrasound machine. I don't know. My point is as PTs, in some ways, we're our own worst enemies. I know at least I am with my thought process. Right? We need to think about what the marketplace values, not how to protect our turf.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, you know what? If somebody has back pain, they may not care if I'm a PT or not. They just care about that I can help them with their back pain.
Right.
Maybe I should lead with that.
Right.
Because the gal in the bikinis, they're reaching out to them, and they're selling $500 programs, cash, online, pay instantly, download the PDF, and good luck.
Right.
Now, come on, people. We're PTs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I know. So I said, well, you know what? Since I don't know any PT who's doing this, I'm just going to make some of this stuff up. So we decided to start a business for stretching services.
Mm-hmm.
And I made up the name, StretchPlex.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, now, what am I going to call these people who do this? I don't know what the heck a flexologist is. So I'm going to make up a name. Body coach. I made it up.
Sure.
Right? Doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Now, before everybody gets all bent out of shape, we train them. We put them all through their paces, that very robust onboarding program. They have to pass and test, et cetera, et cetera. They usually have a personal training certificate. But the key point is, this is not physical therapy. Not physical therapy. We started in our office, but that's a little bit later in the story. And we gave it a go. Right? So I probably laughed on your podcast well over a year ago, and now I have another year's worth of experience under my belt.
Right.
I want to share that with your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're contemplating it, they can know some of the pros and cons. And, and the first question is, should you start cash-pay service? Now, for right now, let's say, I don't care what it is. It could be anything.
Right.
It can be burning incense. It's whatever, but it's cash-based, right? What are the pros of that? In my experience, almost every obstacle that you encounter in physical therapy is removed in cash-based services.
Mm-hmm.
Really. No prescription, no billing department, there's no EMR, there's no hiring PTs. I can say that because I'm a PT. No insurance companies, no pre-authorizations, no verifications. You know all that stuff.
Of course.
You can increase your rate whenever the heck you want. How about that?
Yeah, you set your prices.
That'll stop being a track. Right? You can do crazy referral offers, and it's okay. And I mean crazy. You're limited by your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a blue ocean. Right? Very little companies are out there doing that. PTs should do that.
Right.
Should. Now, I'm painting a rosy picture. There's got to be some cons to this. And there absolutely is. There's no doubt about it. And let me tell you, just so you know, you have to learn retail marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not good at retail marketing. It's likely that you don't know how to advertise.
Right. Like really advertise.
Like really advertise.
Not like go knock on physicians' doors.
That's right.
That's right. We're talking like really marketing strategies.
That's right. And it's different from PT. Now listen to this. I have a PT business totally separate from this cash-based business. So these two companies are running, in the same direction, but they're separate.
Right.
And we run Google ads and we run Facebook ads. Well, don't you know, I didn't know this, but I can tell you, the business responds 100% inversely to those advertising platforms. Fascinating. I really can't get Facebook ads to work on the PT side. On the cash-based side, crushing it. Like we're getting like $9 a lead. It costs us $9 a lead, and we're offering an intro at $19. Mm-hmm. So let me say that again.
Wow.
We're collecting $19 before they come in, cash, online. It costs us $9 to get to $19.
That's crazy.
So what do you think our ad budget is?
As big as you want to make it?
Unlimited.
As much as you can?
It's unlimited.
Right.
And I'm like, am I reading these numbers right? So,
well, do you recognize a con that might be out there as well? Because as I would look at it, you are a seasoned owner that has a lot of your policies, procedures dialed in, and you have sufficient admin time to run your PT practices. If one of the cons would be starting a cash-based service could be a distraction to getting your crap in order on the PT side. Like if you don't already have your crap in order on the PT side, this could be a serious distraction and both ships could go down at the same time because you're not paying appropriate attention.
Absolutely. And that's one of my first tips for success, that you should not be running both. Now I've had PTs calling me and a lot of them say the same thing. They're doing that to get an extra room. So I think we're going to start cash-based businesses and, I'll just, I'll run it. They're like, that's bad idea. Could you? Probably not. Should you? Absolutely not. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
People need to be educated on your services in general when you do a cash-based service. And that's why Google ads really don't work as well for this business as it would PT.
Okay.
We have fantastic leads on Google ads. Now, I don't do the Google ads. My buddy Justin Gilligan. I don't know if you know Justin Gilligan. He is a ninja. If anybody wants to know how to do Google ads, Justin Gilligan at Narrowfoot Rehab. That guy's the master. I just say, Justin, here you go. Mm-hmm. That he does that. People Google search for back pain, knee pain, neck pain. That's why Google ads are really good in physical therapy versus Facebook. And it's the opposite true in cash-based services. People are not there. People aren't usually Google searching infrared near me. People just don't do that. But when they scroll through their feed, if they have a short video of a very attractive person, me for example, that's going to stop them in their tracks. And they're going to say, "I want some of that," and then and that's that's the difference between the Facebook and the Google.
I get it.
But I don't want to get too tangential, but there's a definite difference between these two services.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, could you start cash services? Well, you have to think a little bit about what kind of PT owner you are. Are you more of an entrepreneur, or are you more of a franchisee kind of person? And let me explain that a little bit more. Would you be apt to say, I want to make the playbook versus I want to follow the playbook? Right? So an entrepreneur says, I want to make the playbook, which is totally cool. And I talked to a PT owner last year about, okay, I want you to help me. I want to franchise your StretchPlex into my business. I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, and God love him, I love this guy. He goes, I want to change all the services, I want to change the prices, and I want to change the name. And I'm like,
that's not a franchise.
I think you want to do it yourself. Like, now that's an entrepreneur.
Right.
And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. Versus more of a franchisee concept, which is, hey, listen, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want the proven process. Teach me how to do it. I don't necessarily want to spend time writing out processes and org charts. Let's set it up. I will follow it. I know it's going to yield a certain amount of cash. So you need to decide in your head which one are you?
Mm-hmm.
For most of us, running our PT practice is just about enough.
Right.
Unless you got a whole bunch more time to do that.
Right. And I'm sure as you're looking and talking to some of these owners, you recognize the successful ones are the ones that have they probably have some form of leadership team on the PT side already, that they can leave the day-to-day services with them. And this other organization, if you're going to do another cash-based service, requires a separate organizational chart, requires its own policy and procedures. They aren't two businesses under the one business. They are two distinct businesses, and you have to treat them completely separate. We recognize the same thing as we started implementing EMGs into our practice, that it wasn't getting anywhere because we just tried to put it into the PT practice and it was like going perpendicularly into it. No, we had to run them horizontally next to each other and have separate organizations, separate tasks, separate policy and procedures to make sure they're running appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, and you can do it for a short while, but it's gonna butt heads. I mean, that's as I say, that's why they make the desks in first grade so small, because you're not supposed to be there when you're 20.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to leave the house.
Right.
And you have to. Highly recommend you do that. Also, just from a legal standpoint, there are no physical therapists. We don't talk about physical therapy. It has nothing to do with physical therapy.
Got it.
And that's the way we like it. With the exception of one thing, and I'll shoot down to some of the lessons that I learned and some of the assumptions that turned out to be wrong. When I did this, I thought, oh my Lord, listen to this. Every discharged patient is going to go right over to StretchPlex and get the stretching, and they're going to want to do it. We also do compression and personal training. They're going to love it, right? The reality of it was it was the reverse. People were coming into the StretchPlex side. The body coaches were seeing these people and going, yeah, I think you need a physical therapist. So we have a non-insignificant amount of business referred to the PT side from StretchPlex. So if you lament the fact that certain physician professions own physical therapy and refer to themselves, now you're that person. And that's okay. There's a part of me that kind of likes that.
Yeah.
And it's totally fun. Right? The customers love it. And it's a win-win.
Have you recognized why it hasn't gone the other way as much? Why they haven't gone from PT discharge to StretchPlex for maintenance programs per se?
Certainly. Absolutely. Number one, we get distracted because there's so much to do that we haven't optimized that.
I see.
Right? You are constantly looking at what are the constraints in my business and going after the biggest constraints. And when you do that, there are so many big fish that you totally forget, oh my gosh, what about all those PT patients that we're discharging? Because now that we're out of the office, how do we even let them know that we're there?
Right.
So you simply, there's not enough hours in the day, and you could probably devote, a period of time to optimize that and automate it, which I highly recommend. But it's one of those things where, okay, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get to that. I'll get to that.
It's something that if you just spent a couple months focusing on, maybe a discharge email that includes a free visit or discounted consult after their discharge, so that if the PT didn't have the conversation, there's some automation like you're talking about, or training PTs on how to have the conversation.
Right, and we do that in our CRM. We do that. Yet I am certain that it's one of those things where almost every process that you do, we all tend to do it about 80% of what it should be, and we stop there because we're like, that's good enough. And that when you go from 80 to 85, sometimes that's all the difference between okay and abundant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're recognizing, that just get 1% or 2% better and keep reiterating that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the magic happens.
Right.
So I'll go back to our CRM and I'll look at our email automations and I'll be like, oh my God, it says massage and we don't offer massage anymore. So, messed up there.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff that it's really never done.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely a major lesson. The other lesson that I learned, simply through our mistakes, is processes and procedures are pretty darn sexy. They're sexy. It didn't used to be. But when you get to a certain level, you're like, ooh, process management? That's titillating almost, right? Because that if you can document those processes and procedures, and then you can ensure that they're repeatable, that's why McDonald's is successful.
Right.
What a Big Mac is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So spending the time to write down your processes and documenting them in multiple platforms, and then training people, it is not sexy in the beginning, but trust me, that is.
Well, that was the whole concept behind E-Myth Revisited, right? One of the more popular business books out there. And it's not specific to the PT space, right?
No.
All the small business owners, if they want to get out of the grind and experience some sort of freedom from their practices, they have to develop policies and procedures. If they want any sort of expansion outside of themselves, whether it's one clinic or multiple clinics, it's going to require the systems, policies, procedures to say, this is how I expect things to be done. This is how we train people to get those things done. And this is how we hold you accountable to those things. It has to be done. Right. And
it has to be done. And yet PTs think that we're special, but our business is just like every other business. You can't fight physics. There are certain laws of business that happen, and they apply to us as well. But as PTs, we like to think, there's the ego talking. You like to think that you're special as a PT, right? I got my special Steve magic sauce that when I see a patient, they must be with me. Isn't that great? I got my fan base. I got my groupies, and they got to have they got to have their best. Yeah. Well, what you find out is you run out of bandwidth eventually. There's only so many hours in your day. and you sit down and write out what your special sauce is. Now, you might say to yourself, well, I can't write out that special sauce. It's special. It's me. But it's really not. So we've written down what the special sauce is. And I'm telling you, here's some of it. When a patient walks in, look them in the eye and say hello. Call them by their last name unless they're 18 years or younger. Say hello, goodbye, and thank you every time. If they brought somebody else into the room, introduce yourself to that person. Include them in the conversation. Right? Now, I know I sound like an old man. I know I sound like your dad right now. But people don't have those skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's the special sauce.
The soft
special
skills.
sauce is the soft skill. Not where the sartorius. It's does that person feel like you're listening? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're getting tangential. But see, it's the same thing that applies in either one of those businesses.
No, it's all about systems and procedures, especially as you're developing something at your scale where you literally want to franchise something. Yeah, I'm expecting a full list of policies, procedures, systems, you name it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, here's the next big one. You are limited by your people. It's finding the right people always. Always underline and put it in quotes. Now, in December, we had two studios. Like we were starting to open them up. Man. Mm-hmm. Right? Because there was all these opportunities. I told you, blue ocean. So we're opening up these studios, taking them out of our PT offices. So we created like 4 physically separate studios in the span of 4 months and hired people. Right? And the wheels started falling off. Right? Because we made a mistake. We made a mistake because we didn't slow down and hire the right people based on our values, and then be crystal clear as to what the key characteristics are of that ideal employee, and then train them, and then coach them, and then hold them accountable. So then we spent the last 3 months firing people. The wrong people.
Right.
Right? So that's a cautionary tale. Now we're just coming back down to that. And now we regrouped and we said, hey, guess what? We're not going to open up anymore for a while until we get this thing down pat. So that's a huge lesson. Probably a big lesson in your PT business as well.
I think every experienced owner has gone through that. And what you're saying is you've lost a lot of time and you've lost a lot of money by hiring the wrong people who you thought were the answers. And you see it a lot as I talk to young owners who are single practitioner, single office owners, right? It's just them practicing. And they're saying, I need to hire somebody. I've got to hire somebody. I need to hire somebody. Mm-hmm. And so with the attitude, and it's easy for me to look back on it because we were in that boat back in the day where I just need somebody. Yep, if you can fog a mirror, like I'm hiring, let's go. And, knowing the state of physical therapy right now, every owner out there needs a physical therapist, but it's so difficult to coach them into pumping the brakes. I've got these 2 people available and they're nearby and all these great things and nothing to do about value alignment, personality fit, cultural fit, you name it. That's where things fall short. You lose time, you lose a lot of money, and they could do and we've had that happen as well. They could do a lot of damage during the time that they're there to the people who are actually aligned with you, right?
That's a hallmark of your growth as an executive, because the pressure is enormous, right? Got to get somebody in here. And just a couple of weeks ago, our COO on the PT side said, oh, I interviewed, They came into chat out. Didn't like the way they talked to patients. They were interrupting, and I don't think it's a good fit. And like inside, I could just feel my stomach turning into a knot. And I'm like, probably the right call. Yeah, no. You know, and,
Yeah.
but, you know, if you get through that, you always make the right choice.
Right.
When you, in your gut, you know it's no. And you have to go back to your values and say, if these values don't resonate, that person doesn't get it or want it and have the capacity for it and share our values, they're not the right person and it's not worth it.
And I just highlight what you said, though, because some young owners might not necessarily have taken the time to sit down and spell out their values, which I recommend you do. And if you don't, if you need some help, reach out to a coach, right?
Highly.
But you also said they job shadowed. And I can't stress job shadows enough. Like anyone can, during the course of an interview for 30, 45, 60 minutes, put on a facade of who they are and present that in the best light to you as the interviewer. Really hard if you make them job shadow for 2 to 3 hours with a bunch of contemporaries who they don't necessarily need to impress. And many times, those people have come in for a job shadow who I thought were great interviews. This guy's going to be amazing. This woman is going to be perfect for this position. And then the job shadow happens and I get the feedback from the team. They're like, they were on their phone the entire time. They didn't engage with the patients. They were scared. They took a phone call, a personal phone call during the middle of the job shadow. Those things don't work.
You can't draw a line with a slope from one data point. You need multiple data points. Then you can see where the line is going, what that slope is. And that's what that is in your onboarding funnel. You have to have multiple data points. And ideally, you shouldn't be drawing every one of those points because you come with your own biases and you can fool yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I got off topic a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yes, we did. So the wrong people will hamper you. Right. And if you're the visionary, your first hire needs to be the integrator, the operations person, the person who's going to say no to you, the person who is going to question you, the person who makes the trains run on time. That's, if you're a PT owner, that's probably the person that you need the most. That would be almost your first hire, your operations person, and let them run it. You can give them some guidelines, but let them develop it. So if this is something that you're considering doing, you really have to start with hell yes. And if you aren't saying hell yes, it's no. And that's okay. It's okay to say no. Hard to say no, but it's okay to say no. Meaning that you got to be all in and ready. I will do whatever it takes to be successful. That's what the heck yes is.
Right.
Right? And if it's not, then don't. The next number one tip I can give people, get a coach. Get a coach. They are worth every penny. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but as Alex Ramosi would say, a coach helps you learn the lesson without the scar. It'll save you so much time. That's where the value comes. Get a coach. Start slow and don't grow until you have that foundation, right? Make word of mouth is everything. If you do not have a valuable service, no amount of advertising is going to help you. So whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's stretching, compression, or burning incense and chanting, whatever it is that you choose to do, make it super valuable. Spend 80% of your time making that a really diggity dog service that people are going to say, I got to get my Aunt Judy in here. This is so good. Because that means you got something. Otherwise, you have a lousy business.
Yeah.
And you'll just dump money into it.
Yeah. I had someone, I think it was on a podcast recommended. I've done it a couple times since that was really mind expanding. And that is, imagine your service that you're going to provide, this cash service, and think of it in terms of the Airbnb, VRBO, 5-star service. What would a 3-star service look like if I provided this cash service, right? What is 3-star service? Well, the transaction happens and they get what they paid for and that's it, right? Baseline. What does 5-star service look like? 4-star, 5-star service. Well, maybe they get a little bit extra. They get an add-on that's free. Maybe they get a note. Maybe they get a follow-up. Hey, how did it go? Provide the feedback. Here are some other resources that you can also look into. If you like this, you could also try this. And you know what? There's one on sale over here right now. And so maybe that's a 5-star service. Well, push it a little further. And now that I think about it, I think this was the Airbnb guys. They said, what would 8-star service look like? Well, okay, maybe none of that has to happen in person. You can order through our app on the phone or through Facebook ads and make the purchase there. So you never have to get out of your bed. It gets shipped to you with your thank you card with some coupons in the box and and maybe some incense as well.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, like what can you do to push value? And you and I were big Alex Hormozyites, and he's all about adding more and more
value.
Value. And at the very beginning, when you're new and you're starting slow and you're trying to develop word of mouth, it's get as much feedback as you can from those people, even if you have to provide that service for free, so you can get the feedback. Because honestly, when it's your first iteration, you suck. And how can you suck less and suck less and suck less so that you can eventually be worth what you're charging? And if you continue to do better and suck not at all, then you can charge more for those services because people are willing to pay for it. You provided such value. You've gotten to 8 and 10-star service that people will pay double for what you're offering versus the guy down the street.
Absolutely. And boy, you bring up a fantastic point. So let's just stay on that for 1 second. I'm going to give you a story, 2 stories, and one that your listeners can use and try it and see what happens. Robert Cialdini, very famous marketing guru, forget the names of his books, but I mean, incredible. He's telling a story about, did a study, had people in a restaurant, server brought him a bill, calculated the tip. Then they had the server put a mint on the receipt, gave it to the customer, tip went up more. Then they had the server put 2 mints on the receipt, went up like 30% more, right? Low cost item, but high perceived value. So now let's apply that to PT. Let's forget about cash pay service. Let's just use it. How can you use that in your PT practice to your advantage? I'm just going to talk crazy. Let's say your front desk person has to give Mrs. Jones her bill today, right? Oh, Mrs. Jones, here's your bill. And down, oh, I don't have it. You know, we all get that. How about if your front desk person in the mint first? Mrs. Jones, here, have this little mint, that little Andy's mint, you know, the rectangular things that are chocolate, and they got the mint, you know, and everybody feels fancy when they have them. Oh, this mint is for you. Oh, thank you very much. And in her opposite hand, she's got the bill. And here, I'm going to let you take care of that. Right? So the law of reciprocity says, you do something nice for somebody, they're going to, as a reflex, likely do something nice for you. Mm-hmm. And I think the key is to do it before you give them the bill. Don't give them the bill and then give them the mint. In the mint, then give them the bill. Now, life is one giant experiment. Is it worth the cost of an Andy's mint to try it and see if you can increase collectibles at the front desk? Using psychology, right? But that's a little bit separate. Here's one of our ideas. It's so insane. I could never do this as a PT. But we do it on the cash pay side. If I did this as a PT, I'd be out of business. Went to a local school, talk to the faculty. You know, it's August right now at the time of this. School's about to start. Go to the faculty meeting and say, hey, listen, here's an idea. Identify somebody in your faculty who's going to be faculty member of the month. Faculty member of the month. I don't care who it is. Do a raffle. I don't care. But this is what they get. They have been teaching all week, standing, following kids around. They're tired. They're achy. Their legs are swollen. It's Friday. They can't wait. Directly after school, they come right to StretchPlex. There's a table waiting for you. You come in, you get a 25-minute stretch. I put you on the lounge after that, put my sport pump compression boots on you, squeeze your legs for 15 minutes. Oh, and while you're there, I'm going to offer you a complimentary glass of champagne. How would you like that? Faculty went crazy. And I said, no charge. It's our gift to the community. Every Friday, that one teacher who you identified, every Friday, that means 4 Fridays in a row, they come in and get this treatment. Start your weekend off right. Would you like that? Went crazy over it. Now, that's wow. Bottle of champagne in my neighborhood, I can get a cheap bottle for like $12.
Mm-hmm.
I can get 4 glasses of champagne out of it. $2.50 a glass. Low cost, high value. That's a wow factor. You think a teacher won't feel good about themselves and your business if you do that for them?
Mm-hmm.
Can't do it in PT.
Right.
But I can do it here. That's an idea.
That's a great idea. I had plenty of patients that I asked if we could have a happy hour. Get a little buffet bar in the middle of the gym. Have a cash bar at the side.
Well, and it wasn't I know it wasn't my idea.
You did great.
You go to these fancy hair salons and they give you a complimentary glass of wine. Now, you and I don't know that because, follically challenged, but I know that they do it. So why should my business be different? Right. Why can't I do that? Why can't we do that? Why can't we give value at a low cost, but a high perceived value so that you become irresistible in the marketplace? Where people say, I'm not going anywhere else that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're focused on the customer experience. So much we talk about simply what we need to do as PTs to be compliant and follow all the regulations and get out our bill appropriately, get out our charges, make sure that people are coming in. But maybe we don't spend enough time on the customer experience. What are the patients experiencing in the front room, at the front desk, on the decorations on the walls? How are they treated while they're there? How are they greeted? Like you talked about, do they get a goodbye as they're leaving the office, or is it quiet? Is it crickets as they're walking away? Does anybody care? That's right. From soup to nuts, from the first phone call to the last bill that they get, how can you improve it and take it from a 3-star experience to a 5-star experience? And that's where you start generate a patient culture and a word of mouth, like you're talking about, where people will drive past the other physical therapy clinics to get to yours.
Word of mouth, you might say that school is the number one indicator of long-term success. And the opposite will kill you faster than anything else. Unless people are compelled to come to you. But there's very few businesses where that's the case, right? So the marketplace does dictate your value, whether you have PT after your name or not. So you might hate that I just said that, but it's still true. It doesn't make it untrue. It is true, right? Because we lose patients all the time to the people in bikinis on Instagram. You can hate it all you want, but it's probably true. And they make it super easy. Click here, download this PDF, just put your credit card in. How can we do that? Well, I did it. I just created a separate business. So you can do it. If you want to do it, I've proven it. So I just want everybody to have their minds open of the possibilities, and you have to readjust your thinking a little bit. There are obstacles. And again, a coach will help you navigate some of those obstacles because it will stop 99% of the people out there. Not plenty of people at annual conference, and they're like, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing exactly what you're doing." And I'm like, "Good, meeting up? No, I got it. Great. See you next year. How you doing? Still thinking about it?" I'm like, "Okay, well,
yeah, well, yeah." I've got a mentor. His name is Scott Fritz, and Will and I used him quite a bit as we were growing our practices. And he calmly says, yeah, you can keep doing what you're doing. Just don't expect different results.
That's exactly right.
Right. Or you could try something new, especially from someone who's been there, done that before. Invest in yourself and see completely different world. Just don't sit there and do nothing and complain about it. Just please.
That is priceless. That's priceless. To have that kind of mindset, priceless. And that's why it's great to be in peer groups and masterminds and coaches, because it elevates your game. Otherwise, you're that cranky old person barking at the moon and complaining and throwing your pillow at the TV screen. I don't want that. Man, I'm a PT. I want PTs to be successful. We are safe, but we don't got a lot of sizzle. It's okay to have a little sizzle.
Yeah, I think and what you see, especially with the movement for many clinics to go strictly cash-based, right, is they've learned what we were not forced to learn in the traditional in-network outpatient ortho clinics, and that is how to market ourselves. The cash-based services, they're wholly reliant on word of mouth, like you're talking about, great customer experience, selling a plan of care. These are all things that we don't necessarily focus on in the in-network space. But the more you do that in the in-network space, you'll see the possibilities of dropping some of those low-paying insurances and your numbers staying the same, if not better, right? So there's real value.
Did you just have a podcast on fulfilling a plan of care?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And it's just a different mindset. So as people are looking at cash-based services, they can't take their PT mindset and just shift focus and think that what they did in PT worked, so now I can do this and it'll work there too. No, it's a different mindset, right? Because there are different players.
Yeah, and it allows you to be creative in a good way. But what we train our employees to say, first thing out of their mouth is, what problem can I help you solve? Every word is important there, right? So think about Donald Miller. I am not the hero in this story. I'm the guide. The customer is the hero. What problem can I help you solve? That's powerful. I think every PT should ask that when a patient's in the door, right? I know you have a knee replacement. What problem can I help you solve? Because none of my patients come in and say, I lack 3 degrees of full extension. They say, I can't get off the toilet.
Right.
And we know that, and we all know that intuitively, but that's, for example, something that we need to train the next generation to be able to think like that, because it really is that important. That's where you show your value to the marketplace.
Right.
So, hopefully this is very eye-opening to everybody. And I'm still, to some extent, I'm not trying to be glib about it. We're making it up as we go along. We're evolving. We're thinking of what valuable things we can offer people. And we listen to our customers. And sometimes they say, yeah, you blew that one. And I'm like, ooh, that didn't work. Okay. And then we pivot off of that. Because the reality is, in 3 months, not many people are going to remember that you played rock music in the studio or something. Something was obviously a mistake.
Right. Well, like I said, it's a completely different arena that you're playing in when you're talking about cash-based stuff, because you need to stay on top of the customer feedback at a significantly. You need to hold that feedback and get it more often than you do in the insurance-based side, because that is kind of cut and dry. The changes that happen there are going to be generally slow moving over time. How we treated now compared to 25 years ago isn't significantly different. It's different, but not as different as it could be in other industries over 25 years. The IT industry is completely different now than it was 25 years ago, whereas the physical therapy industry is not. I mean, we've gotten some technology improvements and and some data points on how to treat better, but it's very similar to what we were doing. So if you're going to do a cash-based service, you've got to stay on top of things on a regular basis. You've got to know what the population wants. And when things fade out of popularity, they fade out of your clinic as well. You don't just keep doing the same things.
And in both businesses, it takes some courage to ask your customer how you're doing and why they're here. Send out a 1-question survey. Why do you come to us? And wait for those responses to come back. You might be shocked. Because what I tell people is, it doesn't matter what I think, what you think. You tell me. And then I focus on that. Customers all said, I'm here because, I think it's going to make me taller. I would start a height improvement program and see what I could do.
How do you change around the words of spinal decompression to make them think that traction?
Oh, you little buggers. You see how they did that?
Just change the words. Yeah. Traction doesn't tell you what is actually happening. Spinal decompression is like, I need my spine decompressed. It feels like it's all smashed together. Great marketing.
PT would never think to offer that as a cash-based service. So you got stuff in your clinic that you could probably offer for cash-based.
I had people all the time tell me while they're laying on heat and stim, tell me, if I could just come in and do this, that'd be fine. I'm like, wow, we are more than just the heat and stim. They're like, whatever, just give me you don't have to touch me. Just give me the heat and stim. Now you can do it and just charge them cash for it. Why not?
Well, you forget this part, but I did that years ago, and I called the program an appatorium. So you come in after work, put you on heat and stim for 15 minutes, we'll close the door, turn the lights off, nobody will bother you. And people loved it. And I'm like, come on. That's how it is.
So now like you said, it's been over a year since we did the first podcast and you introduced StretchPlex to my audience. What would you say you've been very successful? Have you met projections with your cash services? Have you been more than successful? Have you been happy that you've done it?
Oh, this has just opened up a whole new world. And I think we were looking at comparison year over last. I think we're up, 38% in gross revenue. We're concentrating right now on market share. So what we want to do is I just want to see that slope going up of engagement and customers and revenue going up. And then on the backside, we turn around and then we try to make it efficient. So that's the kind of step that we're doing. And as you know, as any business grows, there's that constant struggle between, capacity, production, getting the lead, serving the lead, and that's, you're always doing that. And that's where we are now, trying to get down a formula where we know exactly this amount of square footage, this amount of production centers, yield this much revenue with this much overhead, returns this much back to the company, and then go.
From a high level perspective, go ahead.
And it's hard to imagine that those words can even come out of my mouth because I don't think I'm that smart. Amazing.
we know you're that smart. We know you're that smart and sexy. The thing that I wanted to ask though is I think a lot of people, and correct me if I'm wrong in your situation, but I think a lot of people look at these cash-based services because we know the profit margins in PT they suck. I mean, we're talking the average is like 8 to 10%, maybe 11% nationwide.
Or zero.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's zero.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why do you have a clinic at that point? And there are people who are out there who are 15, 20, 30%, right? Mm-hmm. But in general, the profit margins are bad. And so we're looking at cash-based services because the profit margins we're assuming are better. And I would, just an overall question, you don't have to share specifics, but would you say that that's the case?
Yes, I would.
Good.
How about that?
Well, I want to make sure, because you don't want to jump into something and find out, well, crap, I'm doing this new thing and I'm still at 10% profit margins. That's not worth it.
Yeah. And let me give you one final analogy that I think would help your listeners conceptualize it. And it also works in your PT clinic as well. Think of it as a restaurant that has tables in it and waiters serving customers. So it depends on how you view it. You can say, hey, how close to full am I table in my restaurant? Like if I have a big restaurant, I only have one table, it doesn't matter if that table is full of customers all day or not, you're losing, right? If you put a bunch of tables in there, you don't have to have them full all the time and you're still going to make money. So the restaurant, the tables, and the waiters is your clinic and your staff and how close to capacity they are. So it's always trying to make sure that you have as many tables as you can in that restaurant and you have as many waiters serving all those tables as possible.
Right.
So I think that's a way to view not only cash-based services, but PT as well. So if you have a big old restaurant, you have one table, you're not going to do well.
And I think it goes back to, in order to make this most efficient and profitable, you need to have a separate business that's dedicated to it, so you can have separate financials that you can assess separately.
Well, just from a liability standpoint, it has nothing
right
to do with physical therapy. Nothing.
Right. It needs to be a separate LLC. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole structure needs to be completely different. Because
separate accountability chart.
Yeah, and you want to see productivity standards like you do on the PT side. You want to, your marketing budget is going to be completely different and significantly greater on a cash-based service than it is on the PT side.
Yeah, and that's why you probably shouldn't be CEO of both companies, because the CEO of Coke isn't the CEO of another company. Now you might say, okay, Elon Musk, but I'm like, come on, you can name people on a hand that there's only so many rich brands, and that's why they stand out. And you're probably not it.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You only have so much bandwidth. But finding an operational person to run it would be best practice. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, getting leadership in place. We recognize the same thing as Will and I grew with the EMG stuff, like I mentioned earlier. He had to take over the day-to-day PT services. I had to take over the day-to-day EMG services in order to really get it going. And once we did that, that's when we saw growth on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, when you're distracted, even though you can do 4 or 5 things, you're not doing them at an intensity to really make a difference. And anybody can reach it, right? So if my competition owned 4 different businesses, I'd love that. I'd beat them easily. Because they can't focus.
Right. Well, anything else you want to add about your experience over the past year plus on your cash-based services and Stretch?
I want PTs to be successful. I want you to think outside the box. I don't want you to look at these other complementary businesses and, say bad things about them and that, they've got, how dare they do that? I mean, you can do that. Or you can say, I think I'll do that. It can be that simple, right? And that's just, you can't fight gravity. So if anybody wants to talk to me, they certainly can. You can find me online. Just Google search it. Last name's Rapposelli. It's like wrap it up and sell it. And they'll find me. And I'll be happy to talk to anybody.
2 E's, 2 L's.
That's right. Yeah, you can find me all this places.
You're on LinkedIn and StretchPlex has a website. So if you want to check that out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally.
StretchPlex.com.
StretchPlexNow.com. And you can feel whatever you want. It's okay.
StretchPlex Now.
Yep.
Okay. StretchPlexNow.com. Okay. So people can check that out and reach out to you through that as well. Awesome. Yep. Thank you so much for taking your time, Stephen. It's always awesome to be in touch with you. And
as always, it's the highlight of my day, Nathan, to be with you.
That's awesome. It's great to have you, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks again. Peace.